Well, can you hear me all right? This is sort of a sound check. If I go like this and then drift off, you just say, I can't hear you. Anyway, it's a real pleasure, actually it's an honor to be able to be your speaker today. But I'm not wanting so much to give a speech, but to have a conversation with all of you about climate change.
Hold it up.
Yep.
You see, thank you. So, I happen to be better at this. We set in front of us a major issue that you've probably heard about with gloom and doom, and I'm here to give a message of optimism. We really have an opportunity to make a difference. Is there a practical solution to the issue of climate change that we can live with? Is there a role for conservatives that can make a difference? I hope by the end of our meeting here today, you'll have a chance to know that the answer is yes in capital letters. But we have to act with dispatch because we have to get our house in order in the next 10 years. So that's the substance of what I'm here to talk about. And we'll have an opportunity to engage in a conversation, not only with me, but all with other people at your table. I'm a climate conservative. As Maureen might have said, I'm a member of the Citizen Climate Lobby's Conservative Caucus. I'm also an engineer. And you meet a lot of engineers around here in the valley. I was just talking. Excuse me. How's that?
It's off. It's off. It's not working.
Hello. Okay, I'll have to project a little bit. That's all right. Can you still hear me all right? Okay. Well, I was saying I was an engineer, and my worldviews, many engineers in the valley, are formed by something called STEM. That's science, technology, engineering, and math. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. But my wife Jen always laughs at me. We get to talking about a serious conversation and always seem to manage to turn that conversation into some sort of problem that I need to solve. So, I apologize for that in advance. But like many of you, I've been aware of the climate change issue for quite a while. And it took me several years of study and investigation. I tried to look at it from all sides. And there's a lot of sides in climate change. You probably know that. But really what tipped me over the edge and made me a climate advocate is it because of my concern about my legacy. You see, we all have a different kind of biological clock. And that's what we're going to leave to our future generations, really. Here's my legacy. There's Jen, and there's 3 of my grandsons. I love them, care about them deeply. And what I have as an engineer in the head, I also feel for them in my heart about the future. I grew up in the Bay Area. It has the most wonderful climate in the world. Hands down. That's why many of us are here. But over the period of time since I've grown up, I've witnessed a slow and gradual decay in the climate. It's not the same way as it used to be. And I want my grandchildren to have the same healthy climate that I have. Okay. Agenda today, I want to talk about 3 things with you. We're going to have a conversation. And the conversation is climate of concern to conservatives? Secondly, what does a climate solution, a conservative climate solution look like? And third, what can you and I do about it to make a difference? So I want a quick poll to see kind of where you are. It is called the 5 fingers test, or the 5 fist test. And if you're a 1, hold up one finger. I don't concern myself much about the climate. It's sort of in the middle. It says they want and support a healthy climate. That would be 3. 5, if you're a full bore climate activist. So are you ready? Let's see where you all are. Put up your hands.
3.
Okay. 2, 3s, 1s, 4. Got a good mix. All right, thanks a lot. Well, actually, you're in pretty good form, but around here in the Santa Clara Valley, in the valley here, there's a national firm that does climate demographics. It's called Yale Climate Communications. Been doing it for over 10 years. You'd be interested to know that all of your neighbors, people you know at work, people you know in church, 75 to 80% of the people that live in the valley believe that climate change is real and humans have a lot to do with it. Kind of interesting. Okay. The reason for that is because there's change in the air. You know, when I was growing up, the bay was always the bay, always the way it was, and I always thought that was the way it was always going to be. The level didn't increase very much, but now you can see, and this is up here in the Embarcadero, that the tide is coming up. It's called the King's Tide. Over in Florida, they call it the Sunny Day Tide. And it turned out, back about the 70s and 80s, scientists started to measure the sea level rise all over the world. And it was gradually keep creeping up about a millimeter a year. And then, in around 1990, it started going up 2 millimeters a year. And now it's going up 3 millimeters a year. My son Ben and Karen, my daughter-in-law, are buying a house up in Marin County. And Ben comes up and he says, Dad, he says, I'm kind of worried what the sea level is going to be. I'm going to be in that house for quite a while. I kind of want to know. And all the cheaper homes up in Marin County, it's kind of expensive. Well, it's expensive everywhere here in the Bay Area. He wanted to know if it's going to affect his property values. We sort of looked at that. There's some excellent maps about what sea level rise is going to be in the Bay Area. You can just write down and look at it. 20, 30, 40 years from now. Ben decided to pick a house a little higher up, a few more feet. And I thought that was probably a good idea. Sea level rise is occurring up till now because of expansion of the ocean. The ocean is getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and water expands and gets warmer. We're also beginning to see another effect, which is the melting of glaciers. It's not the melting of the Arctic, because that's floating ice, but what's happening in Greenland, we heard about Antarctica. That's dramatic. We let it go. We stopped burning fossil fuels, which I'll talk about a little bit. Sea level would go up 20 feet. Think about what difference that would make in the Bay Area. But it's going to take a couple centuries to do it. Nevertheless, changes in the air. Change is really in the air. You all know what this was. This is a picture that was taken last fall. It was during the Car Fire. We had the worst air pollution for a couple of weeks than anywhere else on the planet. Worse than Beijing in China, worse than Delhi in India, worse than everywhere. It was darned unhealthy. Okay, we know what the cause was. It was a car fire.
What caused it?
It was a car fire.
Oh, yeah.
It ripped through the town of Paradise.
Yeah.
Such a tragedy. Where we were under a discomfort, people up in the northern part of the state were losing their lives. My wife's cousin and her husband lost everything in Paradise. They barely escaped with their lives. Talk about PTSD. Something. You've seen some of the pictures. The reason that we see the high level of people concerned about the climate is they don't have to trust some scientific paper or what they're hearing, they just have to go outside. Nobody's seen this. Nobody's seen this in California. So what's going on? In the past 20 years, out of 22 years, the past 20 years have been the warmest for the whole planet that's ever been on record. This goes back some 150 to 200 years. Never been warmer than what we're experiencing right now. You can watch what's happening. Those 4 years, the last 4 years, the hottest of them all. Not only is the Earth warming, it's accelerating. There's a reason for this. The science of global warming has been known for over 150 years. Back in the 1800s, scientists were worried about why the Earth is as warm as it is. They were afraid of ice ages. In Europe, they could see that ice had covered all of Europe, northern California. Why was the Earth as warm as it is? A lot of discovery. And then finally, a guy named John Tyndall, who's a Scottish scientist, did an experiment right in front of the Royal Society of London. There they all were in the audience. He did an experiment that conclusively proved in 1856 the reason that the Earth is livable is because of trace amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's been known over 150 years. In 1896, another scientist who went on to win the Nobel Prize, a guy named Savante Arrhenius, he says, I wonder what would happen if we artificially increased the amount of carbon dioxide and doubled it. I just want to know. He had a whole bunch of graduate students. They went off and did it on pen and paper. It was the first climate model. It sure did show an increase. So this is not something that's new. Today, over 97% of climate scientists will tell you that the evidence for global warming caused by burning fossil fuels is overwhelming. 97%. Not only that, but more than 80 national academies of science all over the world, including the United States Academy of Science, will tell you that we are causing the global warming that we're experiencing. Okay, what does this mean for California? Well, you can read some of the effects. It's gradually warming. We're going to be 8 degrees warmer by 2080. That's going to be when my grandsons be, about my age, and they're going to wonder, what the heck were you thinking about? 8 degrees warmer. California is sort of slipping south, and it's going to be like northern New Mexico. And I kind of wonder what the climate in the area is going to be. We read this, but here's the thing. These things like the car fire, the wildfires that we're seeing in California, the droughts, the floods, they're not happening just here, they're happening all over the country. In fact, they're happening all over the world. The thing that concerns me as conservatives is there's no thing that's going to grow government bigger and it's going to be interfering in your life than these kinds of things in climate change. This is a subscription for bigger, more intrusive government. Just think about it. PG&E just went belly up.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? They're going to make it a public utility owned by the government. How good is the government going to be running our electric system? Not so good. I don't think so. This is a real danger. Conservatives have a real incentive to want to do something about this. It's going to be a problem all over the country. The public is going to have to bear the burden. Already in the United States, the bill for climate-related severe weather events is something like $200 to $300 billion a year. It's not on the books, but it's happening. The tornadoes, the floods, everything. So we have a climate conundrum. Fossil fuels, which when you burn, you release carbon dioxide. Fossil fuels have been immense value to us. It's built our country. It's lifted humanity out of the doldrums of being poor. We created a great society. But there's one side effect that's unfortunate, and that is the fact that when you burn fossil fuels, it produces artificial carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We're well on the way to increasing, remember I said doubling this guy back in 1896? We've increased it 40% already. A quarter of that was generated right here in the good old US of A. That little thin layer, that's the atmosphere. It's incredibly fragile. Every year we dump globally about 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into that little thin layer. That's only 15 miles thick. That bright area is called the troposphere. Gotta think that year in and year out, we've been doing this for decades, it's gonna make a difference, and it is. And that's the warming that we're really seeing. The good news is, that's our country all lit up and powered. It's a beacon for all of the great things that we've brought to the world, to ourselves. We're standing here today, enjoying it. A lot of technology has been developed in the United States and elsewhere, but largely in Silicon Valley, to take us off fossil fuels. Cheap solar technology, wind turbines, battery technologies, electric vehicles, all kinds of stuff. You know what? If we turn the switch and wanted to go clean on energy, if we wanted to, it would take us a while to do it, probably a number of decades. But back around 2050, you take a satellite picture of our clean energy society, it'll look just like this, all lit up. Of course, it'll all be LED lights that you're looking at. But they'll all be, okay. So,
Thank you.
anyway,
Thank you.
we'll live in a clean society. We have it within our grasp to make this change. And if we do so with a can-do attitude of America, we could make a difference for the whole world. Not only for us, but for our children and grandchildren. But there's a catch. There always is. Now, before I go in and talk about this, I just have a quick poll of where you are. Is this mostly new information, or is it something you heard before? So, new information, raise your hands. Okay, I'm assuming that the rest of you, this is old information. All right. Okay, great. So while we're up to date, the question is, what can we do about this? Is there a path forward? Is there a solution to climate change that we can live with? And the missing link is, if we knew what the solution is, will we have the political will as a people to put it in place for our country? And so the remainder of this is sort of talking about a solution. A lot of the objections to climate change isn't the science. It's just, oh my God, it's going to wreck our economy. And that's a reasonable objection. I would listen to anybody who's concerned about the economics of climate change. I was talking about some people at our lunch table. There's some amazing people I've had the opportunity to meet, interact with. One of them is Catherine Hayhoe. She's a climate scientist, internationally recognized. You can find her on YouTube. She's a tremendous climate communicator. She's also an evangelical Christian. She's also a member of the board of the Citizens Climate Advisory Board of the Citizens Climate Lobby. And she says that we can do a lot ourselves by lowering what's called our carbon footprint, saving energy. But more than 2/3 of the energy in this country is out of our hands. Nothing we can do anything about. It's built into the system. But she says it's not out of our hands if we think of ourselves as constituents. Now we're going to get into the political side of this.
Yeah.
But we live in a democracy. We can make change. We've done it before, we can do it again. So this is a little bit of a story about the change to solve the climate crisis for this country and as I said, potentially for the rest of the world. So let's think for a minute, not about the problem. Everybody's talking about the problem, the gloom and doom. Just put that aside for a minute. If we wanted to do something about climate, to really solve it, put it behind us, what would we do? So this is where we're going to get into an exercise. Take just a couple minutes. Talk to the neighbors that are sitting at your table about what you would like to see or you don't want to see in a climate solution. Here's some tips. One is, one way or another, government is going to be involved or not involved. It's how to get the government helping us or to get out of the way. So this is one of the things that I'm hoping you would consider. The second thing is to think about conservative values. What do we as conservatives really cherish? And third, how we successfully solved problems in the past. I'll give you an example. Addiction to smoking. We've driven that down a lot in this country. How did it happen? Who was involved? So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes and hopefully you talk and we'll come back and hear what you have to say. All right. Just talk to your neighbors.
Okay, Karen, what's the solution?
Government should keep subsidizing solar panels.
Right?
It should be.
And solar panels too. Well, like I said, the ice age, that no one was working in those days.
We're sitting at the right table.
They brought the cookies.
There you go. Yeah, that's what we really cherish, is immigrants. That's but actually, Sabrina.
Right. Without going broke.
Not going broke.
Alright, so I'm hearing, you want something that's not in the
Yeah, your unintended consequences. There you go.
Okay.
That's another way of saying it.
Now, if they stop the fossil fuel, what happens? Then it will work without
People
people.
would be able to drive, right?
Well, they're already doing that, they're creating housing, you don't need a car, everything. Love your stores and stuff.
You would like it to be voluntary.
You know, I was watching a video of South Korea, no traffic whatsoever, and the privileged can drive.
That's right.
You know, and the streets are like, there's no congestion, nothing, it's just like, there's no cars.
That's one way.
They put in solar panels.
The problem is with the electric car, you gotta charge the battery, and that's gotta be coal power. So,
You have to look at the total system if you really understand the
My point is, I had really looked into solar panels. I am doing myself.
But you would like to use market mechanisms, and you don't want to increase taxes, right?
right?
The people to be conscientious.
Okay, I know this is a little bit short, but I want to hear what you all say. Any ideas of what you don't want to see in a solution to climate change? I know nobody wants to see climate change, but the solution to climate change is kind of what I'm interested in hearing about. Any ideas?
Don't want the government involved.
Don't want the government involved. Sounds like a good idea. Yes.
Don't want higher taxes.
Don't want higher taxes.
Don't let the sun put out as much as it does.
Don't let the sun put out as much as it has.
And don't let the world freeze us.
Yeah, well, you would be surprised to know, by the way, that the sun has increased its intensity by some 30% over the billion years. Why are we still here? That's because nature takes carbon out of the atmosphere and makes what you call petrocarbons. Over the eons, we have still a habitable climate because there's not as much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than there was a billion years ago. It's getting increasingly hot, but the natural cycle puts it underground. Think of that. What a wonderful Goldilocks world we're in. Except we're digging it up again. That's interesting.
What happened to the Sahara? 4,000 years ago, it was a rainforest. We have too many cars for that?
Right.
Well, it's going to be a rainforest again, actually, as the climate heats up. That's what the scientists predict. Yeah, it's going to go back there again. It goes through these kinds of things. Any more comments about what you like, what you don't want to see?
I think it should be an international effort.
That's
You
right.
know, perhaps an international committee working on it to get all the countries in the world cooperating, because if we do everything and the rest of the world does nothing,
Yeah.
It
Hang on,
defeats our
hang on
purpose.
a thought. That's a real important point.
Yeah.
We could be virtuous while the rest of the world goes off and continues to burn this stuff. So that's a real concern. I'll come back to that. Any others? Anything you would like to see?
Renewable energy, carry on with renewable energy.
Renewable energy, more renewable energy. Yeah. We're not installing it fast enough, but you're right.
Don't waste water.
We could, as I said in that satellite photo, have a completely clean energy infrastructure. All of it coming from clean energy. I'll have to say some next generation nuclear, but we could do it. Absolutely can do it. Yes.
We talked about the government providing incentives so that the people could choose to make good choices.
Good choices. Freedom of choice. You don't want the government coming in and tell you can't drive this particular kind of car. You don't want to. You want to have choices. Okay, so I think we've got sort of a sampling, and I think that's really good. So what I want to do is try this particular climate solution on for size. Okay. Now, one of the most powerful parts of our country that makes it work, most powerful influences on what you decide to do is what?
how much it costs.
Well, getting there.
Right above.
The market.
Oh, the market.
The market. It's not the government, it's the market is what helps us make decisions on what to buy, what to sell. And so a solution that is not government-based, but market-based kind of makes some sense. And you can pick up some of the comments about how this works. All right. So this is a concept. It's called carbon fee and dividend. And I'll walk you through this. Suppose that we put a price on carbon. Very low, and it increases gradually. So what's going to happen? Well, first of all, a lot of the companies that are energy intensive are going to look for ways to use less fossil fuels. Second thing is, there's going to be a signal to Wall Street about investing in clean energy. We're talking about more clean energy. Wall Street investment and the intelligence and dynamism of our country are way better than what the government could ever do by prescription. Absolutely. So when you unleash a price on carbon, you would be amazed at the wave of innovation and competition that get low carbon, high efficiency technologies. We're halfway there already. That would set off an enormous change all by itself. We, as consumers, will make choices ourselves, because ultimately those prices are going to be reflected. It may mean that, putting in and we remodel our home, we make it a LEEDs home. It's high insulation, very efficient. We might even decide that some of those solar panels might fit on our roof. We might even buy an electric car. What a concept, right here. But in any case, it's going to influence those business side, that 2/3 that we don't have control over, and our own actions. Okay, But the issue is what you do with the money. You increase these fees. Does that go to government so they can invest for us?
No, absolutely
You can
not.
see you're in the head of it.
No.
What if you divided up and you gave equal dividends to each household on the other side? Give all the money back. Now, if you are investing in home energy and lowering what they call your carbon footprint, you're going to come out ahead. You could probably use that money for something else. If you're people of less economic means, it's going to help counterbalance the fact that now the price of gasoline is kind of going up a little bit. The price of electricity is going up a little bit. It turns out that this kind of approach is very effective. And people, poor people, talk about fairness, will probably be, they'll come out a little ahead or just about the same. And nothing's going to tell anybody that they can't go out and buy a big SUV and buy all the gas they want. Of course, they'll pay for it. There's no reason that you can't make that choice. So this is the essence of the carbon fee and dividend approach. As an engineer, I really like it. How many moving parts? Hardly any. What makes it work? Market power. All right? It's simple. People can understand it.
I don't really understand what you mean by charge a fee on fossil fuels at the
Okay,
source.
what it means is, that's a good question, is that at the wellhead, or at the port when the oil or the fossil fuel comes on board, you charge a fee, and that's passed along. It's not going to be charged at the gas pump. There's a few points of entry and there's a certain number of wells. When that fossil fuel comes in, it will be assessed a fee. Yes.
Probably worth noting that this isn't going to be a fee charged to households. This is a fee that's going to be charged to like big oil and gas companies
yeah.
that are burning fossil fuel to make gasoline and things
Okay,
like that.
who
So-
does the charge?
So the government
Yeah.
would charge it to the big gas, oil and gas electricity producers. And what David is saying is that eventually that would roll down to us as we buy gas, but it would happen at a rate that things will change along the way, you know, so as it gets more expensive there, things will be changing to have other alternatives, like the renewable energy that table over there was.
The government's still managing it.
Actually, they don't make any choices at all. There's nobody saying that you have to do anything.
No,
You
I'm
make
saying
the
they're
choice.
managing it.
Ah,
The government is managing it, basically.
it's 100% returned to the people.
So they're
And-
not telling you that you have to use this money for solar or for insulation. You
No,
get a
I'd like
check.
to see the money come back though. If the government's in charge of managing it, you really believe it's gonna come back to the household?
Yeah.
Let's suppose that it was held by a third entity. It's not part of the government.
No,
Entirely,
that's-
entirely possible.
Yeah.
So now we're really interesting. These are interesting details. So the devil's in the details. But in the main, no moving parts, no
Okay.
regulation.
Yeah.
Money comes back. No money's taken out of the economy.
Right.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting, and it's sustainable. This is something that's gradual. It's not going to make a difference in climate change in 1 year, but it'll make a change in 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
You're going to have something that's politically sustainable. And that check start coming in, and the politicians start to mess with that money. You think that people are going to stand for that? I don't think so.
Right.
Okay, so it's politically durable.
You think that if you charge at the pump or at the well, that the company that gets charged on that's not gonna pass that on to the consumer?
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I would make a choice for a more efficient vehicle. And to some extent, I'm going to put solar on my roof. I'm not going to pay that tax. I'm going to do all the things I can not to use fossil fuels. And I'm getting the check that counters it. So I'm going to do all the right thing. It's just like putting a dollar tax or fee on a pack of cigarettes. I'm going to think about smoking. It works. The thing is, it doesn't come to the government. Economists will say that this is the most efficient way to deal with major problems like this. It's the fairest way, the most effective way. And in fact, there was an article in Wall Street Journal this January, and 45 of the leading American economists endorsed just that. Okay? So, we have people like George Shultz, the Secretary of Treasury, Lawrence Summers, also Treasurer of the Secretary. We have Glenn Hubbard. We have Martin Feldstein, Council of Economic Advisors. We have Ben Bernanke. We have Janet Yellen, Federal Reserve. We have 27 American Nobel laureates in economics who supported this. Pretty amazing. So, if you believe that we should be using the power of the market to solve this problem,
Yes.
I think this is a way to do it. Now, the question is, this is a good idea, has it ever been tried? Yes, it has. The province of British Columbia has a scheme very much like this. Economists like to look at data. It's very popular, it works, they've driven down the carbon, and this is called empirical data for analytic analysis by economists. So it does work. Me, the engineer, says this is pretty cool. We have a beta test or a prototype. Yes, question?
So fossil fuels includes oil, natural gas,
And coal.
coal.
Yes, yes, yes. So I want to move to how we can make this happen. As I said, we're tantalizingly close to being able to make a difference. Wouldn't it be great if we look back a year or two or maybe 5 years from now and say, we put the climate change problem behind us? We'd be the envy of the world. And you know we could do it. This is the kind of thing America can do. My organization, I'm a volunteer at Citizens Climate Lobby. One of the things we do, we call it the levers of creating political will, and that's what I'm doing by sharing this information with you today. Another thing we do is we lobby Congress. No, not the professional lobbyists that you hear about. We're volunteer citizen lobbyists walking the halls of Congress. We have a chapter in every congressional district in the United States. This is the lobby team that I led in to talk to Congressman Devin Nunes last June. If you've never done this, it's an amazing experience. We bring in our lobby the values of the organization, which are listed here. Focus, optimism. We believe in relationships, integrity, personal power, and we're nonpartisan. We've been working at this, and there's a bill that's been introduced in the House of Representatives and the Senate. And you can see that it has many of the elements I just talked about, carbon fee and dividend. But we have several protections that are listed here. Now the question of, is it going to be fair to our country if none of the other countries take our lead? We're going to have a tariff called a border adjustment. It's like a value-added tax. And that'll protect our energy, our industry, against countries like China or India or the other countries that don't have an equivalent type of program. We're going to apply that tariff, and we're going to give it to our steel industry, to our oil industry, our aluminum industry, because there's going to be a difference, and we will not put our industries at a disadvantage. A second protection is called the agriculture exemption. One of the things that America does better than any place in the world is to grow crops. We don't want our farmers to be put at a disadvantage. We have a high energy, high impact farming, agriculture, and so we exempt all the fuels used for growing food. The third is called a regulatory adjustment. The thing that politicians like to do when you put something through like this, they'll pass all kinds of subsidies, all kinds of mandates and other things. This puts all further regulation on these greenhouse gases in suspension because we want the marketplace to work. We want it to do its thing. We want to keep it simple, no moving parts. We want to preserve freedom of choice. You want to buy the big and drive a big car, that's okay. You're going to pay more for gas, but nobody say you can't do it. So that's what the act is. Now, there's a number of benefits, and you can kind of see this here. It's effective. We've done macroeconomic studies, it's economics, to show that in 12 years, we're going to drive down the emissions 40%. By 2050, we're going to drive it down 90%. Hugely effective. We can break the back of climate change for this country. Creates jobs. When you bring those dividend checks, a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck. What are they going to do? They're going to go spend it, put it right back in the economy. It's actually mildly increasing the number of jobs. Over 12 years, 2.1 million new jobs. Good for people. We're going to drive down carbon emission from coal plants. You can't imagine how much health effects that's causing all across the country, particularly in the east. All the pollution drifts that way. Something like 300,000 lives would be saved for putting this act in place. It's bipartisan. The only meaningful legislation that we've passed in this country since the time of Richard Nixon has always been bipartisan. Because the other party gets in power, they knock it down right away. This is way different than the clean power plant in the last administration. Next administration again, it's gone. Okay, we've got one good chance to beat climate change. This is it. It's got to be good for the duration. And it's revenue neutral. Government doesn't get the money. It goes right back in the economy. To me, this is a compelling case for something that we can do, as I say, to get beyond the climate change issue. We can do it together. So, there's another, sort of nearing the end here. I appreciate your interest. But let's just spend a couple minutes, and this is more to the point because of the nature of the Women's Federated Group. Should the party take a proactive position on climate change? Eventually, the Democrats are going to clean up. Wouldn't it be good if you had a market-friendly solution that works, that you could put on the table? A lot of people, a lot of independents would say, I better think again about the Republicans. Let's look at what they're doing. You're thinking about rebooting the party in California? This is a way to start. You've got a new chair. You can make people turn their heads. Does climate solution that I talked about meet your conservatives' values test? Yeah, maybe. Could be. I'm hoping you find this pretty interesting. It's way different than you hear on the other side. Way different, by the way, than the Green New Deal. All right? This is a smart approach to dealing with the problem. And third, what actions are you personally prepared to take to change the political climate on the climate? How to get involved. This is a grassroots deal. We need all of you. So I'll spend a couple more minutes and then we'll close. Just talk about what you've heard. The beginning point on dealing with climate change is talking about it. Talking about it to your neighbors, talking to people who are sitting next to you. So I'll just do a couple minutes. Yes, I'll talk about that. Did we have the little flyers? Yeah, if we can pass those out. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I'm gonna put
Everybody
this.
gets a flyer.
Tell them this will be a message.
Yeah, the back table. Oh, thank you.
You know, we have a platform that is broad enough that it doesn't encourage ridiculous, actually. Calls for market-based solutions.
This is what it says on always use reduce your use of plastic items and recycle or repurpose the plastic items into easily conserve energy by replacing your incandescent light bulb and turning off lights and small appliances when you're not using them.
What are you doing with nuclear?
Full bore.
Huh?
I believe in it, full bore. I know quite a bit about nuclear. Are you gonna? Yeah. Okay. Well, let me just. I know we're sort of cutting you a little bit short, and we've gone a little bit long, but I wanted to make a couple closing remarks. First of all, thank you so much for listening to me today, and I hope it's worthwhile I'm hoping that you take the opportunity to tell other people what you've learned, that there is a plausible solution, something that you might be able to identify with. Again, we're talking about the solution, not talking about the problem so much. And I hope that some of you will consider joining the Conservative Caucus, of which I am a member. Now, I have a sign-up sheet in the back as you go out the door. I would love to recruit a couple of you. But if you put your name down, I'm not going to tell anything about it to Citizen Climate Lobby. I will follow up personally. You're not being signed up for anything. All you're signing up for is I'd like to have an opportunity to get together with you on the phone or out for coffee, drill down on what you understand, drill down on how you might want to help. Love to have to work with you on this. So that's out there. I had a handout. We talk about carbon fee and dividend, and as a reward for your listening to me, you got your first dividend check today. Flip it over on the back, and it's a little bit about our Conservative Caucus and what we're trying to accomplish. So again, I'm going to stay around if you have any questions about what you heard, but if you happen to think that you might want to get involved, I'd love to work with you. Okay, so, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
That was interesting. That was really a better perspective.
Okay, good.
Thank you, thank you. And you'll hang around if people.
Absolutely, I'll be here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. Didn't. Just a little something.
Cheesecake is, wow. This is great.
Well, you had to speak, so you know you probably burned up your meal already.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. That certainly put everything in a new perspective. Thank you so much. Okay, Shirley and Jim. Or Jim.